We are coming to the end of spooky season. That's right, the election is right around the corner. Happy Halloween. I will see you on. Greetings, hello, and welcome to episode, I think, 52 of Gary Knits, Gary Rides, a Craftivism podcast at the intersection of making things and doing good. My name is Gary. I am a knitter and a crocheter, and every couple of weeks I show up here on YouTube to show you what I am up to in all of my fiber adventures and to share a few ideas of how we can take our love of crafting and do a little bit of good in the world through craftivism. I hope you are well. I hope that fall has fallen wherever you are. It's actually kind of cool here today, which is fantastic. And as I mentioned, Halloween is probably right now when you're seeing this. I am filming this on the 29th, a day earlier than usual because I have to get out of town for a business trip, and so I wanted to try to get this done before I headed out on the road. It has been a simultaneously kind of quiet but also busy couple of weeks. I think this is going to be relatively quick because I have not made a lot of progress on any of my projects, but we do have a lot of admin-y things to get through because we have a ton of giveaway winners to announce this episode. So we'll get into that in just a second. But in terms of what's been going on around here the last couple of weeks, it's been pretty busy with me for some work things. As I mentioned, I'm headed out of town on a business trip, and so the prep for that has been going on for a little over a week, just a series of Zooms and meetings and things like that to prep for this business trip. Which I'm actually excited about because I'm taking a few days early to be able to visit some friends and to do some fun things before the work piece of it starts to happen. So that'll be kind of fun. And it also includes 4 relatively long flights in the next 2 weeks. So that means hopefully I can catch up on some of the knitting that has gotten pushed aside in the last couple of weeks, and hopefully I can get back on track on some of these projects. We had some friends over for dinner, which is not something we do a ton, but that was really fun, and it included a family that has 2 little girls. I want to say they're probably 6th graders, one of whom, they're twins, one of whom has joined the knitting club at her school, and so it was very exciting to be able to show her all my knitting, show her all the yarn, talk about what, things that she's been working on. They're basically just doing garter stitch, knit stitch right now. So I was able to go into my bin that I keep sort of yarn for charity projects, and I pulled out a couple of skeins of yarn for her. She also said the needles that she was working, it sounded like someone had given them circular needles. And I don't know who's running the club, but for whatever reason, she didn't really get or found the cable between the 2 needles hard to work with, or just something. And so they basically cut those off, and so they were just left with like the tips. So she's just been knitting with the tips, which I guess with small hands maybe it's not so terrible, but I think she's working on like 10s or 10.5s or something like that, and relatively chunky yarn, I think. So I pulled out I have a bunch of needles that I really don't use anymore. They're clover bamboo long single long needles, straight needles. And so I pulled out an 8 and a 9 and whatever I had in the bin, and gave her some worsted weight yarn, some chunky yarn, I think, not super bulky, and sent that home with her. And so hopefully we're going to be able to get together with them sometime, not too distant future. They live about an hour away, and go to their house, and then maybe she and I can sit down and have a little knitting lesson. So that was really fun. There was a kids party across the street from our neighbors who we're friendly with. Had, I don't know, it seemed like there were 50 tween girls running around screaming, dancing, while all the adults were kind of watching the World Series because it had just kicked off. So that was fun. And then we had a Halloween party. So there's been some fun social things going on in addition to work prep for me. The one knitting thing that happened, other than sort of chatting with the young lady who's started knitting, was my local yarn store, which is Knitting Tree LA, each year about this same time does what they call Rhinebeck West, as sort of a little mini celebration to kind of coincide with Rhinebeck on the East Coast. And so they have a bunch of vendors in to do trunk shows, and they have some fun competitions and events. So they have like a knitting obstacle course, they have a fastest knitter contest, fastest crocheter, fastest like knot untangler. I didn't get to see, I was only there briefly this year, just because things have been kind of busy. But I did head down there because it's been a while since I've been to the store. Got to see a couple of the new vendors, some of whom I know, some of whom I don't. Talk a little bit about the upcoming SoCal Fiber Fair, which is coming up the weekend before Thanksgiving. And then one of my local knitting groups that I'm a part of, not the one at the library, but there's a group called South Bay Drunken Knitters. And there's actually a brew pub right next door to the yarn store. And so a small group of us met up there after we'd kind of looked around the store to sit outside and catch up and knit and have a drink. So that was fun. It actually gave me a little bit of a break from Baby Blanketpaloozapocalypse that I have been knee deep in for the last few months. And because those projects are getting a little unwieldy to carry around, I took one of my other projects to work on so I can show you that progress going on. But that's kind of it in terms of what has been going on for us. As I mentioned, I'm headed out this week, and then I go back out on the road again next week. So I have a couple of flights to hopefully catch up on some knitting, maybe watch a movie. I don't know. We'll see what happens on the way. We'll get into it, but I've had a little struggle with trying to multitask, which is usually something I'm pretty good at in terms of knitting and watching, or knitting and listening. And the last couple of weeks have just been a challenge, and I have some guesses as to why that has been the case. But that's it. I did mention that we have some giveaways last episode as sort of a little second podiversary celebration. I said that anyone who made a comment in last episode with spooky in their caption would be entered into some rounds of giveaways. So I have those two to hand out today, as well as another giveaway for the ongoing Go West knit along. So this is my little knit along that I started as, I guess, a bit of a reaction to FOMO for the mystery knit along, the Westknits mystery knit along, which is now wrapped up in terms of all the clues are out. And I actually really like the shawl, so maybe somewhere down the road it will get added to my queue. But because I wasn't going to be participating this year, but wanted to be maybe working on a Stephen West project, we started this knit along so that you could work on any Stephen West project between the beginning of October through the end of the year. And just for fun, we're using the hashtag #GoWestKAL, and there'll just be some prizes along the way so that we can show off our progress. There's a thread in my Ravelry group, as well as the hashtag on Instagram. I rushed through the intro, so I forgot to mention that you can find me on Instagram as Gary Knits Gary Rides, as well as over on Ravelry as Gary Knits and Rides. There is a Ravelry group for the podcast, and in that group is where the thread is to post your photos for the Go West KAL and get entered into those giveaways. So I have that. And then last episode, I said I was looking for a new hat pattern to make a hat to donate to Sunny from Noodly Knits for her annual hat drive, and I'm looking at it. It's over on the kitchen counter, so I'm going to have to go get it here in a minute. And so Wendy Morris suggested, there were lots of great suggestions. I jotted them all down, some of which I already knew, some of which I didn't. But Wendy Morris suggested the boyfriend hat by Stephanie Knits, I think. Here's who it's by. And that's the one I decided to do just because it looked super duper easy. And she also said because of the way that it's a 3x2 rib that it fits basically everyone. So that's the one I did. I'll show you the progress on that when we get into whips and I go over to pick it up off the kitchen counter where I left it. Wendy, here's Wendy's handle. Reach out to me either over on Instagram or shoot me an email at GaryKnitsGaryRides, all one word, no underlines, at gmail.com, and I will get you a skein of yarn for your prize. In terms of the other winners, for the spooky second Podiversary giveaway, the first, and I have a bunch of prizes that are sort of Halloween related, so I'll quickly run through these. These are in no particular order, and I'm not sure who's going to get what, so don't hold me to it. But I have this project bag from, it is Fate's Thread, I believe. Fate's Thread. She is a bag maker who was shutting down her business, and so I was able to, she had a couple of fun designs, one of which was this Halloween-y one, and so I decided to grab that, as well as a couple of others that I'll show you when we get into acquisitions, that will go into the prize, well, one of which I'm keeping for myself, some of the others will go into the prize pile. So that, I have that bag. I have this bag from Happy Little Yarn, from Stranger Things, Hellfire Club, which I showed before. Stitch markers from Bluebird Makery. And then I have 3 yarn cozies. These are from Gabs and Che over at Slip Sis. So some really cute patterns. One's spider webs and little ghosts, and then ghost and candy. And then I also have a copy of the Tanis Gray Nightmare Before Christmas book. So all of those will get distributed somehow among the 3 winners that I picked. So that is Dorel 2625, so that's Dorel, I know, over on Instagram. Carrie Brinkman Soul 7239, who I know is Carrie Brinkman, and then the Blue Knitter, who is Injiri. So congratulations to all of you. I think I have most of your shipping information, but just hit me up on Instagram just to confirm everything, so I don't get things sent to the wrong address, because some of you may have moved in the meantime. And then the last thing is I have drawn another winner for the knit along, and that is Allie SW over on Instagram, who is working on, oh my gosh, it's a Starflake, I think, is the blanket that she's working on, either the shawl or the blanket. So hit me up again, either over on Instagram or GaryKnitsGaryRides@gmail.com, and I think I have your information as well, but I will shoot you a skein of yarn for participating in the knit along. So congratulations to all of the winners. Probably by next time I will have drawn another name for the knit along. We're kind of on this every 2 week cycle. So keep posting those photos of your FOs or whips for the Go West KAL over on Instagram or in the Ravelry thread to get entered into the giveaways. It's been a lot of fun. I've made 0 progress on my botanic shawl, so I'm not even going to show it since last time. After we get through Craftivism here, I will talk about my whips, but I have been bogged down with a couple of them. Some user error, some just not having enough time to work on things. So I think that's it for the admin. In terms of the Craftivism side of things, there's really just one that I wanted to bring to everyone's attention. It may be something that you've heard of from other sources, but there is an event sort of happening now, and it's going to continue in various forms throughout the spring, and it's called Knit Socks for Sam. And that is also, here I'll put the Instagram handle up there, is Knit Socks for Sam. And it is a campaign that has been inspired by a young man who I think is in the UK, and I think he's around 8th grade. His name is Sam. He loves wearing mismatched, brightly colored socks. He has a very rare disease called vanishing white matter disease. And so his family has started this campaign to raise funds and raise awareness of the disease, raise funds for the Vanishing White Matter Family Foundation. It is a terminal disease that has no cure, no treatment, and so they're using this event to raise money and raise awareness for this disease, to hopefully through the foundation to continue to do research to try to hopefully someday find a cure or treatment for this very rare but terminal disease. And based on Sam's love of wearing mismatched socks, what they are doing is during December and January, they're doing a knit along where they're asking folks to make a single sock. I'm sure if you sent them a pair, they could split them up, but to knit a single sock and send it to them. I will link everything down below in the show notes. Here is a QR code. If you're not watching this on your device, you can just scan that with your phone. It will take you right to the Google Doc with all of the links to everything that I'm mentioning today, makers and patterns and groups like Knit Socks for Sam. And so they're doing a knit along during December and January to collect socks. And then during February and March, what they're going to do is they're going to resell those socks, or some of those socks, to raise additional funds. They've also been collecting, if you go to their Instagram account, they've gotten a lot of donations from makers and dyers and things like that for prizes for the last phase of this. So each sock you donate, you get an entry into raffles to win some of those prizes. Then they're going to sell the socks to raise money for the foundation. And then at the end of the event, after the raffle in April, at some point, there's going to be a day that they've called Mismatched Sock Day, where everyone is going to wear their mismatched socks and post pictures, and all of it as an effort to raise awareness for this disease, and then through the raffles and the sales of the socks to raise some money as well. So I think it's fantastic. A ton of people in the fiber world are participating. As I mentioned, there have been dyers and makers of various stripes who have donated a bunch of prizes for the raffle. I know that Pick Up Every Stitch up in Mount Kisco, in combination with Ray and Kevin at Needles to the Ready, are doing an event where they're doing like a sock seminar, or like a day of like coming in to learn how to make socks. And then they'll be in the store doing things as sort of another way to, I think there's a donation, suggested donation around that to raise additional money for this. And so people have been sort of picking up on this idea and taking it and running with it and doing various things to raise awareness of the event and to raise additional money for the foundation. So I think that's a really fantastic way, and once again, just how amazing this this industry and community is in terms of like taking an idea and then making it even more inclusive and expansive to continue to raise money and awareness. So that is Knit Socks for Sam, starting the knit along starting in December. I think they're still open for donations in terms of like prizes and things like that. So if you are a maker or a dyer and you would like to get involved, just head over to that Instagram account. I think there's a form you can fill out if you're wanting to donate something and be a part of this amazing effort. So that's it for Craftivism. I didn't really have too much this time around. A lot of the election stuff that we've been talking about is kind of winding down as we are in the literal final days of the election. So I guess the only other craftivism thing I would say is get out and vote, put on your your Kamala hats and t-shirts and get to the polls. And we don't wear them to the polls because that's typically not allowed. But do whatever you can to help push everything over the finish line these last few days. So let's talk about the knitting. We will talk first about Baby Blanket Paloozapocalypse. The good news is I am on the crochet blanket that I'm working on. Again, this is a variation on one of the sample projects in the Mix and Match Modern Crochet Blankets book by Esme Crick. I don't have it to show. I've shown it a couple of times. I think it's called the Forest Canopy sample that she made. I made just one tweak to it in terms of the patterns because one of them wasn't very baby friendly, I didn't think. Chose my own colors, and I think there are 11 or 12 of the strips that I have been working on. I am down to the final one. I had hoped to be finished and already piecing this thing together by this point before I had to leave town, but that is not going to happen. But I am down to my last strip. So this is one that's called Giant Contrast Baubles, which makes total sense. The pattern the sample that I chose also has the giant baubles, so it's a solid color of baubles and kind of a chartreusey green. But this one uses a contrast color. So I think I'm going to take this with me. I didn't think I was going to take a blanket project with me on the road, but since this is pretty compact, it's just the two skeins of yarn and a hook, I will go ahead and take that so that when I get home, and maybe even in between my trips, I have like 4 days between trips, I can piece them together, and then when I get back the second time, all I'll have to do is do the border and put the tassels on it. So it will probably not be done by the time the baby arrives, because I think that's a mid-November planned event. I don't know that we know exactly what the date is, but I'm glad to be on the last one of this. This one's moving pretty quickly because it's has more double crochet than some of the other strips. Each one's about 40 inches long. You can see in person, I think it shows more than it is showing on camera. That you carry the blue from bobble to bobble, and then you cut it at the end of each bobble row, so there'll be more ends to weave in, and it doesn't look terrible. In person it's a little more visible, and I don't really love how that looked. It all comes down to the two colors I chose. I think if they had not been so contrasty, it wouldn't be such a big deal. The other thing I think is, as I'm looking at the samples in the book and versus my own strips, I feel like, and I don't know that I necessarily recognize this before, but I think I'm a pretty loose crocheter, and I probably could have gone down a hook size and tightened everything up, and I think that would have hidden the carries a little bit more. But I think the bright contrast is really fun, and I think it'll be something fun for the baby to play with. So on the last one of those, I am all of the yarn I'm using, which is the yarn that she suggests in the book, is this Scapius color crafter. And again, I'm doing it all in kind of shades of blues and greens, with that gray, that pale gray is sort of a neutral, and hopefully they'll all look okay together. I think it'll be fun I think it's a little boy. I think it'll be fun for a little boy, and just be very bright and colorful in the room. So that is baby blanket number 1. What has slowed me down the last couple of weeks has been the other baby blanket, the Flying Foxtails Stephen West Brioche Baby Blanket. I've been enjoying the project. If you are following me over on Instagram, you've seen a couple of videos I've made where I've made mistakes and I've had to rip back and fix those. This week the issue, or the last 2 weeks the issue was I came across a row where about half the row I had brioche knit when I should have brioche purled, or vice versa. And I noticed it. It wasn't super visible, especially on the, so here's the blanket. It wasn't, there we go. It wasn't super visible on, this is the right side, the wrong side is the sort of purple. It was a little more visible on the wrong side. I showed it to my husband and he was like, I don't even see exactly what you're talking about, because it was pretty subtle, but I noticed it. And it was also something where, unlike the other mistakes I had made, this was one where I was going to be able to drop down and fix the problems, because it didn't really involve, except in a couple of places, a decrease row, increase, decrease row. So it was just pretty much dropping down straight, fix that one stitch, ladder back up. But it was 5 or 6 rows back, but far enough above where I put the last lifeline in, where I wasn't going to rip all the way back to the lifeline to fix it. Although at the end of the day, maybe it would have been taken just as long. Anyway, so I spent, the better part of a day of where I had time to work on. So it was probably 2.5 hours or so going back and fixing all of those stitches. And then I thought it was fine. And this is where I was talking about sort of the distractibility, which I am completely 100% tying to the election and just my sort of anxiety around what's going on. And not that I feel particularly one way or the other. I think that's probably the biggest problem, is I feel like it shouldn't be that close, and it still is very, very close, and we have no idea exactly what's going to happen, and just sort of this constant sort of doom scrolling and needing to pick up my phone and check what's going on, that I've just not been able to concentrate as much as I would like. And one thing you really need to be doing when you're working on brioche, at least I do, is concentrating. So I fixed all those problems, was back to the races, got a couple of not repeats of the whole pattern, but a couple of passes back and forth. And then the same thing happened again. Luckily I caught it on the next row, but there was a whole section where, I should have been in a rhythm and knitting, brioche knit, brioche knit, brioche knit. And I stopped probably to pick up my phone and look at something, picked it back up, and then just started purling. And so I had to spend more time that one, because it was all in the same row. I did just tink back and fix it rather than try to drop down. But that happened 2 or 3 times, not in as big a way as it had happened the first time, but just several times where I was I'd get a couple rows done, and then I'd find a problem that I didn't like, and I'd either drop down and fix it or tink back and fix it. And it just has felt like I'm 2 steps forward, 1 step back on this thing. All of that said, I'm loving how it's turning out. I feel like most of there are still issues in it, but I don't think there's anything that's super visible. I'm loving how it's turned out. I think it's a beautiful pattern. I think that, and I'm about 80% done at this point, so it's not huge. I mean, it's not going to be a gigantic blanket. It's more like a little stroller-sized blanket. But I only have 2 more full pattern repeats before I do the bind off. So I am not taking this with me, even though it's not gigantic. It's bulky enough that I don't want to bother with it on a plane and just lugging it, from place to place. So I'm going to just put that. I'll do finish up this one last repeat that I'm on right now, and then put it aside and take some of these other projects I have going with me on the trip. And it will be nice to take a little bit of a break. I mean, now that was really a last week problem. This week, as I've picked it up, I'm not making as many mistakes. I basically have just stopped trying to watch any TV or YouTube, or stopped trying to listen to podcasts while I'm doing it, and just really said, if I'm going to be working on this project, lesson learned. For right now, I need to be concentrating on that. It's really strange because for the first probably 50% of the project, I was able to watch TV, I was able to do YouTube, but I think that just as things have gotten a little more ramped up and I'm maybe a little more agitated, that I've had to kind of stop all of the other distracting things. Other projects, it's not as big a deal. I've been able to sit and work on the crochet project while we're watching British Bake Off or whatever without any problems, but the brioche one has been more of a challenge in that way. So that one, my guess is once I'm back from the second trip, that will get wrapped up pretty quickly. Again, probably not going to make it before the baby arrives, which I think is happening any minute now. But I think I feel okay if I get these blankets to the families, by the end of November, a couple weeks after the babies arrive. They're going to have plenty of things going on in their lives that they're probably not sweating it if my present doesn't get to them in time. So I feel pretty. I wish it were done more for me than for them, because, as I'm sure many of you can relate to, as I get to the end of a project, all I can think about is like, what next? Not that I don't also have 5 more projects going that I will need to pick up on, but I'm already thinking about sort of knitting plans for 2025. I don't think I'm going to start anything significant new before the end of the year, because if I can get the things that I have on the needles off the needles, or pretty much off the needles by end of the year, that is going to be the accomplishment. But I've already started thinking about what do I want to work on as we head into the new year. So I'm sure many of you can relate to the all you want to do is start new things when you're nearing the end of another project. So those are the main things that I've been working on. As I mentioned, when I went to Rhinebeck West and it was able to go to the brew pub with the South Bay Drunken Knitters, I took another project to work on, and the one I decided to take on was my Clapotis. So this is for the Knitty magazine Clapotis Fest, which is a celebration of the 20th anniversary of the Clapotis pattern. And I'd never made one. I have always wanted to make one, and so I finally am making one. It was funny because when I went to the brew pub, one of the other women, who was a new person to me, I had never met her before. She was actually visiting LA from Atlanta, although had lived in LA, and that's how she knew about our group and had been a part of it before I had become a part of it. She was also working on a Clapotis, but she's knit like 4 or 5 of them. So she was a great source of information in terms of she's doing hers in sport weight. I'm following the pattern, so mine's in Aran weight, but she has some great tips and tricks in terms of things that she's done with the several that she has made. So here is mine. I'll get the right side facing, that is correct. Not a ton more progress than I had probably last time I showed this. I have 5 drop stitches in the straight section, so that means I have, I think, 8 more. I think you do it 13 times in the pattern. So I have 8 more repeats and dropping of stitches, which is truly the most fun thing you do in this pattern, is when you drop the stitches. And I'm enjoying it. This is being done in Lola Bean Yarn Co. Aran weight in the Wakabi colorway from her Black Panther series that she did a couple years ago. I have stopped with you can see it's very busy, so you can't see the stitch markers, but I started, as the pattern calls, using stitch markers to mark where the drop stitches are going to be. But then after having read some comments in the latest rounds of where you add those columns in, I'm just using pearls on the wrong side, and instead of the stitch markers, and that seems to be working quite well. So I've marked the stitch marker on the last row of the last drop stitch for the straight section before I start the decreases. I'm into my second skein of yarn. So I don't know. It seems highly unlikely to me at this point, unless I just really, really crank on this on my trips, that I'm going to get this thing finished in time for the deadline for the knit along that they're doing and be eligible to the prizes. But as much as I like winning prizes, I certainly don't need any more yarn. So we'll see. My guess is I'm not going to get this finished, and it will become more of a December year-end project to be working on. But I'm enjoying how it's coming out. Very autumnal, and I think it's going to be a fun, cozy wrap to have at the end of the day. So that is Clapotis for the Clapotis Fest, being run by Knitty Mag. As I mentioned, I have not made any progress on my botanic shawl. I am planning to take it with me, just in case I get bored of working on that one and want to work on something else. I'm kind of at the point in the color change on the chroma, the ball of chroma that I'm using as the contrast color, that I'm hoping to get one of the little pops of color, because it's a very muted gradient. It's like grays and blues and grays. It kind of goes back and forth, and then all of a sudden there's like a pop of like white and lavender, and so I'm getting close to hopefully one of those pops. I'm very excited to see how that's going to look with the rest of the colors, but we'll see how much work I get done on that, because I really should try to focus on the Clapotis, because there's still that part of me that says maybe you can get it done in time. Anyway, I'm going to grab the hat that I mentioned earlier. Okay, so I had mentioned last episode that I wanted to make a hat for Noodly Knits, Sunny Co. at Noodly Knits, for her annual hat drive. So she collects hats and sends them to a cancer hospital in South Korea that is run by her uncle. I wish I could had the time to make more than one, but between Knit the Rainbow stuff earlier and Warm the Line stuff earlier, and baby blankets right now, I'm going to have limited bandwidth to do one, even though this will probably get knit up pretty quickly. So as I mentioned, Wendy Morris recommended the boyfriend hat by Stephanie Knits. Very simple, free pattern on Ravelry on her website. It's basically 3x2 ribbing all the way up, and then until you get to the decreases. And here is where I am with it. She, in the pattern, has it Aran weight, and I think uses US 8 needles. Because I was doing it on a worsted weight, I went down a needle size and cast down the same amount. It's very, very stretchy because it's 3x2 ribbing, so it's going to be fine for like a medium-sized adult head. The yarn I am using is Joanna Big Twist Living, 100% acrylic, 199 yards for 110 grams. So this is very soft. It has a little bit of give to it, and it's not rough on my hands. It's a very soft yarn, almost, not quite, but almost has like a kind of a chenille-y feel to it, but much easier to work with than any chenille yarn that I've ever worked with. But there's something about it that makes me think of chenille. What I will say about this is I am, 2 inches, inch and a half, 2 inches into the hat. I have already come across 2 knots, which is, I know there are standards in terms of, for commercial yarn, like how many knots per X number of grams or yards or whatever is acceptable, but I don't think it's 2 in this amount of yarn. So I have a bunch of this yarn. from a year or so ago when they came out with all the different pride flag colorways. And I went down to my local Joanna and grabbed whatever they had on the shelves and was going to use them for giveaways, or they basically went in the charity bin in terms of yarns to use for charity hats. So this is although they did not label them as pride colorways, they put them out during June, and they were all the colors of the pride rainbows. So this one is called Serenity, but it's the bi pride colors. So it's not bad to work with. The stitch definition is fine, but I just cannot believe that there were like two knots so soon in it. So I will take this with me. This is basically my take it in the car, and if we get somewhere early and we have to sit in the car and wait for something, or I'm not driving and can knit in the car, it's my project for that. But I'll take this with me on the flights as well. And my guess is I will have this hat done by the time I'm back from my first trip, because it's going to be done in like 2 or 3 hours. So I think it's not really self-striping. It's kind of pooling in that striping way. I'm not sure how it's all going to look at the end of the day, but it's very soft. So I think for a cancer patient, it's going to be a nice hat. So that is the boyfriend hat in Joanna Big Twist Knotty yarn. And that's really it in terms of, I have no FOs to show. I don't think there were any FOs, so I have none to show. And then the other whips that I have working, which is the Botanic Shawl, as I mentioned, the Curdock blanket from Carol Feller. Again, after I did my video a couple of weeks back on having to pull out the cords and rip back 10 or 12 rows, I've done a few more rows on it, but I'm certainly not. I had these big plans that, if I could just get 4 rows of that done a day and 8 rows of this baby blanket, everything was going to be on track. It's all fallen apart, and that's going to be basically my focus knitting once the baby blankets are done. That when I have a little more lead time, I would really like to get it done by late January, where there's a birthday that it should be given for. So we'll see. It is what it is. I can only do so much, and things come up and I get off track, and that's okay. I'll be fine. In terms of acquisitions for the last couple of weeks, a lot of the prizes that I just showed for the Halloween stuff, the yarn cozies from Slip Slip Sis and the bag from Fate's Thread, those were all acquisitions in the last week or so. I'll start with the things that go in the giveaway pile. These are also bags from Fate's Thread, which will probably be done as prizes for something closer to the year-end holidays. So I guess this one could have technically maybe been a little Halloween, but it's really Christmas. So this is a Krampus bag, which I think is just amazing that someone out there was like, what we need on a fabric is Krampus. So these are just basic drawstring bags, good for a small shawl, socks, something like that. So the Krampus bag was one of them. And the other one that I thought was really cute was like a little puppy over plaid. So not technically holidays, but I think because of the white and the red, that it kind of gives holiday vibes. The one that I kept from, again, Fate's Thread was, or maybe still is, was going out of business, was having a big sale on sort of all the stuff that she had sort of in the inventory. And I found this one that I'm keeping for myself, which is Broadway. So lots of different Broadway shows. This one is a zippered bag, and the zipper is a wicked zipper. I got a couple of these, and there was a friend of mine who's also a big musical theater fan that I sent one of those off to him, the drawstring version of that. And then I did keep one of the Slip Slip Sis yarn cozies for myself just because it's really cute. It's flannel and it's these little woodland creatures. There's a little squirrel. You can see. It's kind of hard to see. The creatures got up to the top. The little woodland. There you go. Vaguely holiday, I suppose. I don't know. Kind of gives me that vibe. There's a little hedgehog. But I'm keeping this one for myself as really more of a test than anything. I've not ever used this style of yarn cozies. The ones I have that I have always used are the tube types. So this is one, and so I've never used the ones that are like little sacks that are closed off at the bottom. So I thought I'd keep one for myself, test it out, see which one I like. I've gotten better about using them for projects, and I found that it does help on the keeping the tangles down a bit. The only yarn that came over the last couple of weeks was my monthly Woolens and Nosh self-striping sock yarn. So if I'm showing it, everyone else has already gotten it, so I'm not going to worry about it. Apologies if this is a spoiler. You could always look away for the next few minutes. This is the October Club colorway. Very autumnal. It is called the Fall Cozy Kit: tea, books, candles, flannel, wool, socks. And it has this rust mini and kind of pale burgundy and mocha colors and some cream, some, I would say peach in there as well. Very, very pretty. Looking forward to seeing those knit up as stripes, but I have so many skeins of self-striping sock yarn now. So that is basically it on acquisitions, and I think that is a wrap for this episode. Thank you so much for taking some time this week to spend it with me. As I mentioned, I hope all is well wherever you are. If you have enjoyed this, please share it with a friend. Like, comment, subscribe if you haven't already. We continue to try to build this little community and get bigger over the next year or so. So have a great next couple of weeks. Happy Halloween. Happy Election Day. I will talk to you in a couple of weeks. Thanks. Bye-bye.